It's time for a story. Isn't that good? While you are getting extremely comfortable, preferably excessively comfortable, I am going to take that moment to tell you that this podcast and these stories are supported by patrons. So if you like them and you would like more of them and you would like to become a patron too, you know what? All of those things are possible. And you can find out more about how that works and how to do that on patreon.com/Can I Tell You a Story? Now, are you excessively comfortable? I hope so, because it's time to begin. The skeleton is reading. The book is handwritten, old, older even than the skeleton. The book of myth. As a recovering myth itself, the skeleton finds comfort in the stories that make and remake the world. The skeleton keeps its place with a bony finger running down the lines. It wonders sometimes if any of the characters that fill the pages in the vast and ancient library have also escaped extinction, rewritten themselves into new lives. Outside the library, there's a hush in the sound of bird call, and the skeleton rests a bookmark between the pages. It stands, shifts and stretches, cracks its knuckles one by one, opens and closes its mouth and twists its head one way and then the other. It shouldn't feel tension, being only bones, but it remembers, and that's almost the same. It clicks across the floor to the window and looks out. Out the window is a horse. It has a rider on it. They're coming up the path. The path is overgrown, weeds and brambles. The rider has a handsaw tied on the end of a pole, and he's not doing a good job of beating back the undergrowth as he swishes it back and forth. Would have been better if he'd had a scythe, the skeleton thinks. But I guess beggars can't, and all that. The skeleton leaves the window and clicks down the stairs, tying a cloth around its hip bones as it goes. No real need for modesty, considering, but some habits are hard to break, and people seem to appreciate it, the living ones. Less bones to look at, marginally less to be disconcerted by when they can't look the skeleton in the eye and lower their gaze only to realize they'd be staring at breasts or a penis, depending. And it's hard for them to come back from that and tell the skeleton what it is they're hoping that the library will provide. The man on the horse reaches the library and the end of the path. He slides off and leans his saw on a pole on the side of the horse. The horse moves and the pole falls over. The man looks at it like he wasn't expecting that to happen. He thinks about it for a minute, then seems to decide that he probably shouldn't leave sharp implements where someone, or his horse, can stand on them, so he picks it up and leans it against the wall instead. It's only then that he looks up and sees the skeleton standing at the top of the steps up to the library proper. He doesn't seem to know if he should bow or not, so he bobs a bit, like a drinking bird. The skeleton remembers what it felt like to sigh and shifts its weight to the other leg. The man, upright again, looks up at the skeleton, opens his mouth and then closes it, frowns and tips his head to one side. He says eventually, you don't have, can you hear me without ears? The skeleton inclines its head and a smile spreads over the face of the man. Oh, he says, well, that's a relief. I was thinking I might have to write on a board, but then I realized that you don't have eyes either, and he trails off. The skeleton tilts its head to one side and waits. It's a nice day, as days go. Early still. The sky is lemon yellow and the rising sun hasn't yet burned all the mist from the ground. The air is very still. Cool, with the promise of heat by the afternoon. The library stands on a rise. The view from the steps shows the misty road until it disappears behind a low hill. In the distance, above the mist, is the glimmer of water. The sea, over which is the edge of the world. There must be a boat in that harbour, a boat that brought this man over the sea, as the harbour is the only other place the road goes. Someone else must have sailed it. The man doesn't look like the sailing type. His skin isn't weathered enough, His hands are too smooth. He has stumbled back to his horse. He's digging in the saddlebag for something. It's a roll of paper, tied with a faded ribbon that might once have been red. The roll has been flattened in the saddlebag. The roll has been flattened in the saddlebag and doesn't look as grand as it was maybe supposed to. He comes back up the steps and holds it out, waiting for the skeleton to take it. The skeleton does and unfolds the flattened scroll. It skims the first bit, and the second. By the time it has unrolled most of it, paper piling on the ground in front of bony feet, the scroll finally gets to the point. It's a cry for help, from a king over the edge of the world, wanting a book, holding some kind of magic to help him slay a dragon. The skeleton remembers being able to raise an eyebrow. As far as it was aware, there were no dragons left in the world, and yet, here is tell of one, burning crops and villages, munching on virgins, although the skeleton harbours suspicions of hyperbole. Dragons. Last time there were dragons, the skeleton still had flesh on its bones, and the library at the end of the world was still a myth. The man is standing looking up at the skeleton with hope in his eyes. The skeleton looks at the man, holds up one finger, wait, and spins on its heel, clicks back into the library. On the bottom shelf, tucked in at the end of a row like an afterthought, is a small brown book with a cloth cover that's seen better days. The skeleton opens the book. The end papers are yellowed and flaking with age. This book is also handwritten. The handwriting is thick, the ink pressed into the page by the nib of the pen. Concerns of Dragons is written on the title page. The skeleton closes the book again and carries it back to the steps. The skeleton holds the book up so the man can read the title. His eager hands reach for it. The skeleton pulls the book away and holds out its other hand. The man frowns for a moment before his face clears and he digs in a pocket, drawing out a battered leather wallet. Got to be somewhere in here, he mutters. Just the other day I saw it, I'm sure. The skeleton shifts its weight to the other foot. The man pulls out a battered card with a triumphant grin and places it into the waiting hand of the skeleton. The skeleton inspects the card, nods, and reaches for a pencil dangling from one rib on a yellow ribbon. It writes a return date on the slip pasted in the book for that purpose, before tucking the man's library card into the book and presenting it to the man in the bony fingers of both hands. The man receives it in both his own and bobs some more. He stows the book in his saddlebag, and the skeleton remembers wincing as it thinks of the long way back across the sea and the condition of the scroll still resting at its feet. Still, needs must and all that. The man clambers inexpertly back onto his horse and leaves with a wave that nearly has him tumbling right off again. The skeleton raises one arm in farewell and slowly clicks back into the library to write the man's name in the book of borrowed items. It's already looking forward to the book's return to find out the dragon's fate. I hope it lives, the skeleton thinks. I believe I might like a dragon for a pet. Once we figure out a way around dragons' natural incompatibility with libraries, of course. The skeleton picks up its book once more, carefully removing the bookmark, and settles back in to read. Thanks for listening. I hope that you enjoyed the story, and if you did and you want more, perhaps you'd like to become a patron. Patrons receive bonus stories and other things, including my endless thanks. Literally endless. Long after I'm a skeleton, it'll be floating around, haunting stuff. It's a thing. True story. Anyway, you can find out more about being a patron and my endless thanks on patreon.com/can I tell you a story. Until next time, find a quiet corner and settle in and read. Doesn't that sound like a good way to use your time? What would you borrow from the library at the end of the world?